Ah, the Docklands. That smell of sea salt, that familiar sight of seagulls fighting against the wind, boats lining the harbour, floating atop the sparkling water. People are rushing about, on trams, in boats, in cars, and on their feet. Many people come here to shop at Harbour Town, the complex of buildings that holds the latest fashion, food, and fun for the kids. Then again, a lot of people also come here to take a spin, a very slow one, on the Melbourne Star observation wheel. It is open from 11 in the morning to 9 at night, and it offers one of the most spectacular views of Melbourne that you can find. I wholeheartedly recommend going on it, as it offers a different perspective of the cityscape. It isn't included on this tour since it costs money, and this tour only goes places that are completely free and open to the public. The Docklands were constructed more than a century ago, used primarily for shipping purposes, but now it has become a major cultural site in Melbourne. It has the Docklands Library, with multiple floors full of books, movies, music, and cutting-edge technology, as well as space for conferences that regard many aspects of our culture and the problems in our world. But perhaps the most intriguing part of the Docklands is the modern abstraction. Strange and unique architecture and art that is hidden about. There is a statue of a big blocky cow stuck in a gum tree that can be taken many ways. Perhaps it is the result of a flood. The cow got washed away and ended up in a tree. Who knows? The mystery is the fun part. Then there are numbers in the ground, just scattered around. 60, 68, 80, 81. What do they all mean? Many strange and creative people are what make Melbourne so unique. As we stand out on the central pier, we can see the Bolt Bridge spanning the water. The two towers in the middle of the bridge are like two football posts, with the vehicles going straight through the middle of them. From this position, you can really just take it all in, all the parts that make the Docklands what it is today. Now, walk back to the street and turn right. Pause the podcast until you are at the street, then press play. Across the street, you'll see Etihad Stadium, a multi-purpose stadium that holds many events. It is sponsored by United Arab Emirates company Etihad Airways, which gives it the name Etihad. It was finished in 2000 and, as part of a construction deal, the Australian Football League will assume ownership of it in 2025. It is the headquarters for the AFL and also the Seven Network. Controversy surrounding it is that the AFL regard the landlord of this stadium as hostile, filing lawsuits against the owners and threatening to build another stadium close by. The stadium has also held soccer, WWE, UFC, Kiss, Green Day, U2, Andre Rieu, and Bon Jovi events in the past, although some of these were one-offs. If you keep walking down the street, down the path that runs along the water is the Docklands Library. The Docklands Library was actually where many of us Year 9 student representatives were given the opportunity to attend a fair trade conference. This inspired us to found the Social Justice Club at school, which we all hope will be an agent for change. As you keep walking, on your left side is the Hub at Docklands. The Hub is managed by the YMCA and has sports courts, rooms for hire and free Wi-Fi, as well as any information you need on the Docklands. It is a good place for people to go if they are new to the Docklands, want to relax, or want to find out more about it. On your right should be Docklands Park, a beautiful park, perfect if you are by yourself or with the family. There is abstract public art around the place, barbecues, and places to sit down and read on a sunny day. Now, pause the podcast until you reach Collins Street. Once you reach Collins, turn left onto it. Across the road is a brick building, which is a Fox Classic Car Museum. A lot of people like cars. A lot of people like classic cars. Fox Classic Car Museum holds over 50 classic vehicles, collected over decades by Lindsay Fox. They've got Bentley, Ferrari, Jaguar, Porsche, and Mercedes-Benz. They restore countless amounts of vehicles. It is situated in the Queen's Warehouse, a building over a century old, previously used for customs and the site where the first Australian banknotes were printed. Now, pause the podcast until you see a clearing on the right side of the road. You should see a statue of an eagle. Almost 2 centuries ago, John Batman sold a house right here in Melbourne, right at this spot and right on the hill that isn't here anymore. There is a colourful pole, 18 metres high, which you may be able to see, the same height that the hill was. John Batman was the founder of the settlement on the Yarra, now Melbourne, and look how much it has changed from that house on the hill. Now pause the podcast until you have reached the Southern Cross tram stops, just past Spencer Street. Across the road is a Victorian registration of births, deaths and marriages. The registration of BDM is a place where people who are born, who die, and who are married register. You can also change your name. You could look back into history in the archives at the people that have died, been born, or been married. It has been estimated that 107 billion people have ever lived on this planet, which means that there are 15 dead people for everyone alive. Now, pause the podcast. If you are on the left side of the road, unpause when you reach the China Construction Bank, a shop with neon blue lighting. If you're on the right side of the road, unpause when you reach a building with an English and Australian flag out the front. Now we have reached the Sherlock Holmes Bar and Grill. It is a nice little place where you can drink, eat, and converse while speaking of the works of the ineffable Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It is much like a normal bar and restaurant, except you might also find that people like to speak like they're from the Victorian age of England. Now pause the podcast until you have reached Swanston Street. Once you reach it, cross over and turn right down Swanston towards the Burke and Wills statue, and then unpause it once you reach. Many people know the story of Burke and Wills, but let me just recount it to you. In 1860 to 61, Robert Burke and John Wills left for an expedition from Melbourne to the north of Australia, along with 19 other men. This was a time when Australia was not explored much by the Europeans. They were met with terrible conditions, mostly since it was winter, and had to leave some men behind. They established a camp at Cooper Creek, so Burke, Wills, and 2 other men could come back to fresh supplies. They went north as far as they could and struggled back, only to find that the camp was gone. They died, and many others died in attempts to find them. John King was the only survivor of that one exhibition, but many discoveries were made about the unknown land of Australia. Now, continue down Swanston, past Federation Square, until you are on the Princess Bridge. Stay on the left side of Swanston. Once you reach the bridge, unpause it. The Yarra River splits Melbourne in two, the CBD and South Melbourne. Princess Bridge is one of the connecting bridges between these two parts, and it allows people to easily access both sides of the city. It bridges over the water of the Yarra, Melbourne's most iconic river. Not only this, but Princess Bridge also offers a great view of both sides of Melbourne and all of their unique and defining features. Look to the north side, the CBD. You can see the ubiquitous skyscrapers that seem so tightly packed, all making what we all know as a modern and typical city. But it is what is between these buildings that makes Melbourne more than just a city. You can see Federation Square not too far away, and constructed not long ago. After many failed versions of the city square, the council decided to make Federation Square. It celebrates Melbourne's heritage with the name, commemorating the Federation of Australia in 1901, about 100 years before it was built. It also celebrates the educational part of Melbourne, a very prominent aspect of Melbourne, and the cultural with ACMI and the National Gallery. You can also see St. Patrick's Cathedral, a very old and Gothic-style building that represents the prominence of Catholicism in Melbourne. Flinders Street Station, perhaps the most iconic spot in Melbourne, isn't too far away either, with its dome and clocks that make it so singular. To the south side, South Bank. Closest to you, there is the Hamer Hall, a concert hall that holds orchestras and contemporary music shows. There is a Southgate shopping centre and the many hotels on the banks of the river. You can take a walk along the Yarra. You could even perhaps dine on the river, on the spirit of Melbourne. You can see the Herald Sun right next to the most striking feature of Melbourne. It is the Eureka Tower, over 80 stories high, literally bleeding with symbolism. Wherever you are in the city, you can probably see this colossus, dwarfing everything else. From atop this tower, get a view that may be better than any other place in Melbourne. People afraid of heights have to conquer their fears in order to see what lies below, a mass of wonder and complexity. Even looking up at it makes me shiver. I would love for this to be on the tour, but it is quite tall and once again requires an admission fee. I said that the Melbourne Star puts the city into perspective. This puts the city and far beyond in perspective. You can see the Dandenong Ranges from up there. But moving on, opposite to the tower is the Melbourne Cricket Ground. Its light towers surround the centre of the sporting capital of Australia. Lining the river are many trees